Gojo Satoru, the strongest sorcerer in history, one of the biggest aura farmers in anime, a man so overwhelming powerful that an entire arc revolved on him getting sealed away to give the plot room to breathe. And yet, we are missing the whole point of his character. Because we've been so focused on how strong he is that we miss the point that his strength is not freedom, but is a prison. To understand Gojo, we have to start before he even set foot in Jujutsu High. We have to start with hidden inventory. From birth, Gojo was already defined by what he could do. The Sith Eyes, a very rare trait, combined with infinity, the convergence of two things that made him insanely powerful and special, because this has never appeared in centuries. So before he could speak, walk, or even form an opinion of himself, the world around him already decided what he was. A weapon, an asset. That's what they would see about him. This is the first thing we need to understand about Gojo Satoru, is that his strength, it didn't belong to him at all. It made him become an asset to the society that he lived in. Because everyone will currently see him for the potential of becoming the strongest sorcerer in history, becoming a weapon. Enrolling in Jujutsu High gave Gojo something he never had before, a glimpse of actual life, and at the center of that life was Suguru Geto. Their friendship is crucial to understand Gojo's character, because not only, and I need you to focus on this, not only they were the best friends, but they were each other's moral compass. While Gojo, in all that isolation and being seen as a weapon, made him develop a kinda cold way of Darwinism, of deciding that if the people are weak, then whatever. He didn't care at all, because he had the strength. He never had the struggle, compared with Geto, that had a more idealistic way of thinking, because he wanted to protect the weak. That was the duty of the strong, and that ideology made both of them be able to become friends, because they were the opposite of each other. The mission to protect the Star Vessel is where everything went to shit. Toji Fushiguro dismantles both of them completely, beats Gojo, nearly kills him, and succeeds in killing Riko Amanai. In this moment that is a near death for Gojo, he's able to unlock his full potential, mastering reverse curse technique and awakening the full scope of infinity. Here's what the narrative asks us to notice. In that moment, Gojo felt free, but that feeling was a lie. The instant that he became the strongest, he became chained to the society of Jujutsu, because he no longer had a chance to escape. He became their ace in the hole. He became a weapon, because he became the strongest sorcerer alive. This is a very important key point that I want to bring out to you, my friends. Usually when I see strength, it's written in three different ways. You have the end goal, which is when the hero becomes the strongest so he can defeat any evil and protect everyone with ease. So we also have the example, the All Might, the one that puts that strength in show to give our protagonist a way and a goal to get there so he can follow his footsteps. And of course, we have the BBEG, the big bad, to put it that way. And in Gojo's case, none of them fit that criteria on those common way, and it's because the strength in this case is written as a prison. which is a point that I don't see that many times being written off. Because strength usually is shown as freedom, the power to do anything that you want, the power of being free. But in Gojo's case, it's the prison that holds him. It's the prison that he built. After the Toji fight and all the incidents that revolve around the hidden inventory arc and premature death, I want to bring out a very important detail, and is the fact that Gojo beforehand he had to purposely activate Infinity in a way that let him be human in some sort of way, because he never had to have his walls 24/7 all the time. But after unlocking his potential, he became a walking wall. And I'm going to quote a song here, and I want to quote My Ordinary Life by The Living Tombstone. When you become untouchable, you're unable to touch. And that's exactly what happens with Gojo. He becomes untouchable, but yet the same power that makes him untouchable makes him unable to get another link, because nobody can relate to him because he's too strong. And while yes, he does his best efforts to be able to do that, he's no longer able to be human. This power-up dehumanizes him and makes him completely a weapon. Now we have to touch the most important and pivotal arc in the whole story of Jujutsu Kaisen, also known as the Shibuya Incident. Season 2 of the anime, probably arguably the best and most important arc in the whole history. And while the fandom usually kinda sees annoying, me including, Gojo's ceiling, he was necessary. Let's point it out. It was necessary pulling him out of the equation. But in reality, what happens before that is very interesting, because his ceiling not only was because of his own fault, because his guilt and everything, but also the ways that he could be able to be saved. He was the one who destroyed them. Between the inverted spear of heaven and the black robe, two items that could actually shift the whole story around, he was the one who destroyed them. And what that has in common, those items were able to counter his infinity. This is not a behavior of someone that has confidence. This is not the behavior that the story wants us to believe, that Gojo is this overconfident, very powerful sorcerer. Instead, this is an act of fear. And Gojo is terrified. Not of death itself, but that actually admitting that despite being the strongest, he has flaws. And instead of facing them up head on and actually improving, similar to what Sukuna does, that understands his limitations and utilizes binding bows and any cheap trick to become stronger, Gojo decides to erase any indication of that said weakness. He decides to destroy them, to hide them away, instead of becoming stronger. Because while yes, he learns and becomes stronger, the moment that he sees something that can actually injure him, terrifies him. Because he's afraid to not be the strongest. But y'all never saw that one coming, because we are so focused on seeing how cool he is. The fight that will define this generation of anime fans, the Shinjuku Showdown, brings up two very important details of Gojo Satoru. The first one is how Gojo gains strength. Unlike Sukuna, that he modifies his body and becomes a monster from outside to be able to become the perfect sorcerer. For hands to have the chantings, two mouths to be able to speak despite losing one of them, four eyes, everything. He becomes a monster to be able to do that. However, Jojo goes to the very opposite way. Instead of simply becoming that monster, he decides to detach himself, become less and less. Let's say, for example, his domain expansion sign. Originally, having to use his two hands to do it. Instead, he learns to condense it to the singular hand, which is very impressive in any capacity. As well, Sukuna usually expands his domain, making it the most biggest possible. And what Gojo does? He condenses. He becomes insanely small because he uses a barrier. And that barrier, it gets condensed and condensed and condensed. So while Sukuna takes and takes, Gojo loses and loses to become stronger. But the more important one of the 2 points that I want to bring out in this fight is how Gojo feels afterwards. He believes that Sukuna was holding back, that Sukuna wasn't fighting with all that he had. But this is not arrogance. And you might be wondering, how is not arrogance? In reality, it's an insecurity that is masked with confidence. His entire personality and his whole life is that he is the pinnacle of jujutsu. If Sukuna is still holding back, means that Gojo is still the strongest in the whole world. However, if Sukuna was going all out and actually lost, then Gojo was never the strongest.